Daily Learning.
The sun had been rising a little earlier each day, spilling its golden light through the big windows of a small flower shop that sat quietly at the corner of an old brick street. The summer air was thick but kind, and in that sleepy town where the pace of life rarely changed, Elise had grown used to the way mornings began slowly, like petals unfolding in warm light. She always opened her shop just after sunrise, before the world really woke up, and in that in-between hour, she felt like the flowers could breathe with her. Her shop wasn't much, just wood and glass and faded paint, but it held so much color it often felt like a dream. Buckets of peonies, sunflowers, baby's breath, and eucalyptus lined the walls like old friends who always showed up just when you needed them. Some days, Elise would hum as she trimmed the stems, not because she was happy in the way most people think of happiness, but because the quiet helped her feel okay. In fact, it was in that gentle silence where she found something close to peace, the kind that didn't demand too much from her, just a soft presence, just a breath. Summer made everything feel more alive, and yet for Elise, it always carried a soft ache she couldn't quite explain. The warm wind brushing against her cheek, the heavy scent of roses in the afternoon, the sound of cicadas buzzing like a lullaby. It all reminded her of someone she used to love. And even though years had passed since that goodbye, her heart still remembered things her mind had tried to forget. That's why she loved flowers so much. They never tried to say too much. They just bloomed quietly with no promises. She moved through her days with the grace of someone who had learned to live with a little bit of sadness tucked inside her chest. She didn't fight it anymore. Instead, she poured it into her work, into the soft curve of a tulip, into the careful layering of color, into the way she tied a ribbon like it meant something. And maybe it did. Maybe every bouquet was a small letter she was writing to the world, saying, "I'm still here. I'm still trying to find beauty, even when it hurts." Elise never rushed through her mornings. She liked watching the way the light filtered through the petals, how the dew clung to each bloom like a whispered secret. She noticed everything: the slow droop of a tired daisy, the bold stretch of sunflower reaching for the ceiling, the way a lavender sprig could change the mood of an entire arrangement. It made her feel grounded in a way people never really could. Her favorite part of summer was when the wildflowers came in. They weren't polished or perfect. They grew where no one asked them to, stubborn and free, and she liked to think she was a little like that too. Some mornings she'd mix wildflowers into the front window display, letting them stand messy and proud, not try to tame them, because not everything has to be neat to be beautiful. Even though she spent most of her time alone, Elise didn't feel lonely exactly. The flowers kept her company, and so did the memories. Sometimes they came gently, like a breeze through the open door, and other times they hit like thunder out of nowhere. But she let them come. She had stopped running from them long ago. One afternoon, as the sky turned that soft summer blue and the heat settled like a blanket over the town, Elise stood behind the counter, arranging sunflowers in tall vases. Her hands moved slowly, carefully, but her mind had drifted. The smell of honeysuckle had floated in through the open door, and just like that, a wave of memory washed over her, the kind that stopped time for just a second. She remembered that summer when everything changed, when laughter echoed in her ears and someone had held her hand like it meant everything. She remembered how that love felt like sunlight and how quickly it had disappeared, leaving her with shadows that didn't quite go away. She didn't cry, not anymore. But her chest tightened, and she placed the last sunflower down as if it weighed more than it should. Grief didn't always come loudly. Sometimes it just whispered, and Elise had learned to listen. But there was something beautiful about letting yourself feel things, even when they weren't easy. She believed that. The same way a flower bloomed, knowing it would fade, she let herself love and remember, knowing the ache that came with it. Because without that ache, what would anything mean? Later that day, when the sun was beginning to dip and everything outside was dipped in gold, she stepped outside with a glass of water and sat on the little wooden bench by the shop window. She looked around at the quiet street, the kids riding bikes with melted popsicles in hand, the sound of sprinklers ticking in someone's yard. Life was moving, always moving, even when she felt like standing still. The air smelled like jasmine and warm pavement, and she watched as one of her bouquets, left outside in a bucket for someone to take, was picked up by a stranger. They smiled, left a few coins in the jar marked "Pay what you feel," and walked off without a word. Elise smiled too, because that's why she did it. To remind someone, anyone, that beauty could be found in unexpected places. As the sky turned pink and the first stars blinked awake, she stood, stretched, and walked back in her little shop, where everything smelled like memories and new beginnings. She didn't turn on any lights. She let the last of the sun light the room instead, soft and golden and fading slowly. She looked at the flowers, some fresh, some beginning to wilt, and thought, maybe that's just how life is. Some things bloom, some things fade, but all of it matters. All of it is beautiful in its own way. And in that quiet moment, with her hands still slightly damp from the stems and her heart full of both joy and sorrow, Elise felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. Not peace exactly, but something like it. Maybe this is what healing looked like. Not sudden, not loud, not perfect, but slow, gentle, and full of soft things that kept growing, even when no one was watching. She closed the door gently behind her and left the shop as it was. Flowers asleep in the dark, waiting for tomorrow. The next morning came in soft, like a whispered promise. The sky was already glowing, even though the sun hadn't fully climbed up yet, and the air smelled like the in-between of night and day, warm, quiet, and filled with potential. Elise woke up before her alarm, not because she had to, but because she wanted to catch that golden hour, the one where everything looked just a little more magical. That's when she felt most herself, when the world was still stretching and yawning and hadn't remembered yet how to be busy. She made her way to the shop in her usual way, slow, unbothered, with a coffee in one hand and her hair pulled up in that messy way she never really tried to fix. The streets were still sleepy, and the birds were just starting their morning songs. It was simple, yes, but there was something sacred about those first few moments of the day when nothing had gone wrong yet and everything still felt possible. When she pushed open the door to the shop, the familiar scent of earth and petals greeted her, wrapping around her like a soft blanket. It never got old, how even wilted leaves had their own kind of charm, how the water in the buckets always held the smell of life. She moved through the space with a gentle kind of rhythm, brushing her fingers over stems, trimming here and there, and refilling the jars by the window. It felt like breathing, like prayer, like something quiet but necessary. And even though she had done this 100 times, maybe more, it never felt boring. That was the thing about working with flowers. Nothing stayed the same for long. What was blooming yesterday might fade today, and what looked closed today might surprise her tomorrow. It was a constant cycle of letting go and beginning again, and without realizing it, Elise had built her whole life around that idea. Sometimes, when she was in the middle of arranging something, a delicate mix of pastel, ranunculus, and bold marigolds, maybe she'd think about how strange and wonderful it was that colors could speak so loudly without saying a single word. Flowers had moods, just like people. They had stories too, and even though they couldn't explain themselves, they made people feel things. Joy, nostalgia, love, grief, hope. There was one arrangement she always made in the summer, something small and simple with sunflowers, chamomile, and little sprigs of mint. It reminded her of someone she used to know, someone who once picked wildflowers for her and tied them together with twine, saying that beauty didn't need to be expensive to matter. She never told anyone who it was for. She just made it quietly and left it in the front window like a little offering to the past. That day, she made 3 of them, not because anyone asked for them, but because her heart felt heavy, and sometimes the only way to lift it was to create something beautiful without expecting anything in return. Outside, the sun was getting higher, and the town was waking up. People began passing by the shop window, some on their way to the bakery down the street, others on their bikes, laughing, waving to neighbors. The rhythm of life moved on, like it always did, and Elise stood inside her little world of petals and silence, watching it all through the glass. There were moments, rare but real, when the ache inside her didn't feel so sharp. When the beauty she created softened the edges of her memories. When she realized that, even though she had lost things, people, time, parts of herself, she had also gained something. A stillness, a kind of knowing, a way of seeing the world that was slower, deeper, more tender. And maybe that was enough. As the afternoon light spilled into the shop and turned everything gold, she watered the last of the hydrangeas and wiped her hands on her apron, feeling the heat pressing against the glass like a warm reminder that summer was here to stay. For now, at least. The seasons always came and went, but the warmth of this one felt like it was asking her to stay just a little longer in the moment, to soak it in before it passed. She stepped outside again, just like the day before, and sat on that same bench, with her iced tea this time, not because she was thirsty, but because holding something cool felt nice against her sun-warmed skin. She watched the wind dance through the petals in the window, and she smiled. Not a big smile, but the soft kind that sneaks up on you when you realize you're okay. Maybe not fully healed, maybe not finished, but okay. And in that stillness, she didn't need anything more. Just the scent of flowers, the hum of summer air, the comfort of knowing that, in her own quiet way, she was still blooming too. She stayed on that bench longer than she usually did, not watching the time, not worrying about what came next, just letting the warm breeze play with the strands of her hair that had fallen loose. There was something about the way summer stretched itself out over everything, softly, without asking for permission, that reminded her to slow down too. And as she sat there, she felt the familiar hum of life in her chest again, like a quiet reminder that she was still here, still breathing, still capable of feeling something good. Eventually, the sun started dipping lower, casting long shadows across the sidewalk and turning the flower petals in the window a deeper shade of gold. Elise stood, brushing the back of her skirt as she made her way inside again, her fingers tracing the edge of the door frame like it was something sacred. She looked around the shop with fresh eyes, at the flowers that had opened a little wider in the heat, at the ones just beginning to wilt, at the empty jars waiting to be filled tomorrow, and for a moment, her chest filled with a kind of quiet pride. This place, these blooms, this rhythm she had made for herself, it wasn't loud or flashy, but it was real. And it was hers. She didn't need the world to notice it. She didn't need applause or attention or validation. She just needed to know that each day she was doing something that mattered, even if it was small. And maybe that was the most beautiful kind of life, the one that wasn't about chasing everything, but about noticing what was already there. Before closing the shop for the night, Elise did one last sweep of the space, tidying up here and there, tucking in petals, misting the more fragile blooms. Then she picked up the last arrangement she had made earlier, the one with sunflowers and chamomile and mint, and carried it outside. She placed it on the edge of the sidewalk, where the late sun could catch it just right. No note, no price tag, just a small jar of light for someone to find. She didn't wait to see who took it. That wasn't the point. Back inside, the light had faded almost completely, and the shop glowed in that dreamy way things do right before dark. She didn't turn on the overhead lights, choosing instead to let the string of little bulbs over the counter do the work, casting everything in soft yellow warmth. She moved slowly, like she was afraid to break the spell, and when she finally locked the door behind her, she paused for just a second to look back. The flowers slept in their vases, some standing tall, others beginning to lean, and the silence inside was thick with peace. Elise placed her palm against the cool glass, then turned and walked into the soft night, her steps unhurried, her breath steady. Outside, the town had grown quieter. The sounds of clinking dishes and faint laughter came from open windows. Streetlights flickered on like little stars waking up. And above it all, the sky stretched wide and deep, painted in the soft colors of a summer that still had more to say. Elise walked home the long way, through the side streets where the jasmine grew wild against the fences and the pavement still held the day's warmth. She liked how the night felt, how it wrapped around her gently instead of pressing down. It made her think about all the things she used to fear, all the parts of herself she used to hide, and how slowly, like the petals of a stubborn bloom, she had begun to open again. Not all at once, not perfectly, but enough. When she reached her apartment, she left the windows open and let the summer air drift in. She didn't turn on the TV. She didn't check her phone. Instead, she curled up on the couch with her legs tucked underneath her and stared out at the stars, listening to the hum of cicadas and the soft rustle of leaves in the trees. Her heart still carried the shape of grief, but it wasn't sharp anymore. It was softer now, like something smoothed by time. And maybe that was the point, that you don't get over things. You carry them with you, but you learn how to carry them gently. In the dark, with the scent of flowers still lingering on her skin and the quiet peace of a well-lived day wrapped around her shoulders, Elise closed her eyes and let herself rest. The world would turn again tomorrow, and she would wake up with the sun, open her little shop, and begin again. And somehow, in this small and steady way, she was healing, one bloom at a time.